Wow, it's been 5 years since Zoya and I got married. It feels like just yesterday I asked her to become my bride. My name is Eric, and I consider myself one of the luckiest guys on earth. In college, I studied stocks and investments. I think I did well because 12 years later I became a millionaire. I met Zoya when she came for an interview for a secretarial position. Our agency has grown a lot since then. I partnered with Brad, and Brad graduated with me and became an excellent partner in our small but profitable investment firm. We hired Zoe about 7 years ago. She was fantastic, not only in appearance but also in mind. She became my right-hand woman and then my wife. Brad's wife Amy was a housewife. They had 2 children under the age of 5. I wanted to do something special for Zoe and me for our 5th anniversary, so I bought us 4 tickets for a week-long cruise to the Bahamas. We went on a long cruise to the Bahamas and Zoe was really excited. When I told her I'd bought tickets for Brad and Amy, she was even more thrilled. It's great to go somewhere with close friends. The 4 of us were very close, not in a sexual way. We just went somewhere together, a lot. I suppose you could say that Brad and I were not just partners, but best friends. I've dated a lot in my life. I was an ordinary-looking guy, but I had brains. Believe me, many girls like smart guys. I had a normal build, not fat, not thin. My appearance wasn't my best feature, but I had brains. You see, I have a photographic memory. If I read or hear something, it accumulates somewhere in my head, so that helped me. Do you remember the girl who was always turning to me for help with her studies? I spent many nights helping girls with homework while they were in their pajamas. I spent a lot of time at parties, but I never thought I would get married because there were so many women and I loved them all. I was dating a lot, but everything changed when Zoya came along. It was love at first sight. I'd never felt this way about anyone. Zoya was the ideal woman. Gorgeous appearance, perfect figure and legs all the way to her ass. I know it may seem strange, but that's how I saw her. She was special among women. We started dating the moment I hired her. We were inseparable. We were like 2 peas in a pod. I didn't hang out with the guys and Zoya hosted girls' nights. She also went to a local gym to stay in shape. If we had free time, we spent it together. We were very close before I met Zoya. I'd had sex with many women, so I wasn't new to lovemaking. I was willing to try anything with my women, with Zoya. I felt different from the very beginning. I fell in love with her so much, whether there was sex or not, I didn't care. Seeing her, being close to her, looking at her smile or hearing her laugh, it all brought me great joy. I was really happy. I hope I was able to explain my feelings for her. I've heard people say they're in love, but I never believed them. I thought it was just a phase, but with Zoe it was real. I think you need to experience it to know what it's like. Zoya was my whole world. I trusted her completely. I explained. I told Zoya how I felt, and she said she felt the same way and didn't want to be with anyone else. About 1.5 years later, we got married. As I said, life was great and our sex life was better than ever. We hung out a lot and even went to new beaches together. Most people don't know much about nude beaches, which are usually on the middle-aged and older side. Sometimes you'll see older couples there, and sometimes they have children with them. Some older people have not the most beautiful bodies, but they're happy to be there. Some are sun worshippers, while others just love to lie naked on the beach and sunbathe. After you see 100 naked bodies on the beach, the surprise usually wears off. From time to time, you might see a few people trying to look at all the nudity. Most are asked to leave or quickly sit down and calmly look around. Zoe, have you ever thought about sex with other men? I never want to lose you. The love we have can never be replaced by me letting another guy have me. I love you, Eric, and only you. If you want me to dress differently or not go naked, then all you have to do is say so. I always thought that you wanted to show me off and let people know that I belonged. She answered, only to you. She was right. Whenever other men looked at her, I was proud, and at the same time knew that she was mine, only mine. Brad and Amy are a lot like us when it comes to sexual awareness. They also went with us to nudist beaches. Amy also has a good figure, but after a couple of kids in terms of children, she's not in the same category as Zoe. For a woman who'd had 2 children, she still looked great. Brad and I often joked with the girls about trading, but neither of us ever went through with it. Apart from kissing, we never touched each other's wives. The 4 of us had a great connection. We could go anywhere, do anything and not have to worry. It was a real friendship. I know that many people probably find it difficult to understand the situation in our way of life. We showed off, but we were completely monogamous. We went on a cruise. We were leaving Ohio and flying first. On the way to Florida, where we were boarding our cruise ship, we were excited, and the girls were being frivolous the whole time. We had separate rooms on the ship. I was going to make love to Zoya every night. We'd done it before, and so had Brad and Amy. This was never planned. Perhaps it was a camping trip in a shared tent. We usually liked privacy while making love. Once we'd settled in, we decided to explore the ship. It had everything: a swimming pool, lots of gambling, a huge dining area, and 3 snack bars where you can buy something at any time, day or night. There's also 24-hour service. There's room service, and there's plenty of alcohol, and it's available all over the ship. We went to the welcome lounge, where we were all welcomed on board. Drinks were free, and we all had our share before heading off for another tour of the ship. There were 3 entertainment areas. The first 2 hosted most of the events, and the third was for naked guests only. The only exception was that if a woman had women's days during that time, it was funny that for many women these days, autumn is a rest period. I think they were a little shy, and this policy just gave them an excuse. We decided to go up and sunbathe a little. They had a steward at the entrance explaining the rules. He gave each of them a clothes basket and a locker key on a bracelet since no one had pockets. Brad and I looked around at the people while the girls undressed. There were some pretty good-looking ones. We noticed that there were quite a few women looking at Zoe and Amy when they came out, but most eyes turned to them when they walked past a lot of people and sat down next to us. It was a bit of a turn-on for me watching my wife and Amy approach us. We all relaxed and sunbathed for about an hour. Then we ordered drinks and just had fun. I saw 2 guys sitting not far from us. I could tell they kept looking in our direction. It was a bit strange that 2 guys were there alone. Maybe their wives didn't know they were there. Things like this happen often. Men leave their wives and look at other women. By the evening, Zoya and I were sitting on the deck of the ship. I remember telling her how beautiful it was. There was peace and quiet, no bustle of big cities. I remember telling her that I would like to move there someday and live From our vantage point, we could see all the different islands. If Zoya were next to me, it would be an ideal life. She told me how much she liked it too. It's so peaceful and beautiful. There's nothing better than this. In the evening, after dinner, we went down to one of the bars and ordered drinks. We danced a bit and chatted with other crew members and cruise people, listening to their stories. We were sitting at a large table where many of we were chatting when 2 guys we'd seen earlier that day asked if they could join our table. We didn't mind, so they sat down and introduced themselves as Jim Harley and Bob Fritz. I remember everything they told us, but it was mostly bragging. You can still learn a lot from them though, like where they're from, what they do, and so on. Jim was an insurance salesman, and they had 2 tickets to this cruise, which they'd won through an insurance competition. In fact, his name had been picked out of a hat. He was just lucky. We asked him if he was married, and he told us that he and his wife had argued, so he'd asked Bob to join him on the cruise. Bob also worked as an insurance agent and had been divorced for about 2 years. These 2 guys seemed nice enough, but they seemed to have had a couple of... Zoe was flirting with Jim and Bob, who were paying her a lot of attention. Brad and I told the guys that we were investors and never discussed our financial situation. Jim and Bob weren't interested in us anyway. They liked our wives, but we knew they wouldn't achieve anything with them. They were quite cautious, but they didn't even ask the girls to dance. We were a little surprised. Finally, we said goodnight to everyone. We told them the boat would dock after lunch and Brad and I were going to go snorkeling. Of course, the girls said they were going to work on their tan. Zoya and I spent the night alone. Eric, I love you so much. There will never be anyone else for me but you. She said she was my woman. I would rather die if I couldn't be with her. She was everything. The next morning, we sensed a cruise ship docking. The cruise director told us that we would be docked for most of the day and would be back on the water later that evening. Brad and I kissed our partners and told them we were heading to the scuba diving group. They went to the beach and spent the day swimming and sunbathing. As they headed towards the beach, we went towards the snorkeling boat. They provided all the necessary equipment and had instructors who showed us how to use it. We had all the equipment and instructors to show us how to use it. We spent most of the day learning to snorkel. When we finished, we went to look for the girls. We walked up and down the beach, but they were nowhere to be found. We asked the attendant if there was another beach. He told us there was a nudist beach on the other side of the hill. It was only a couple of 100 yards away, but it was blocked by boulders and a hill. I was a little concerned that the nudists couldn't see inside. After all, Zoe never took her clothes off without me. I was kind of her protector anyway. Brad and I made it to the entrance to the nudist beach and saw Amy smiling at us. "Where's Zoe?" I asked. "Oh, she's about 100 yards from the beach," Amy replied. "I needed to go to the bathroom and I was going to get us something to drink." She replied, "Why didn't she go with you?" Zoe got a cramp in her leg and said she'd wait for me while I got some water. The guys helped her back to our blanket. I didn't like it at all. I told Brad and Amy I'd go get Zoe while they waited for their drinks. I had a bad feeling about this. I looked around. At the beach there weren't many people around. I spotted 2 men and a woman about 100 yards from the beach. I ran towards them. It was Zoya. What were they doing? Oh no, this can't be. I ran as fast as I could across the sand. When I ran up, a fight broke out. As I was getting between these 2 guys and Amy and Brad, I was told that it was no use chasing Jim and Bob alone, so he stopped to help me. Zoe came up to me to tell me how sorry she was. I told her to get away from me. I was honest with her. I've never talked to her like that. Brad then he helped me up and we left the beach. He helped me back to the boat and to the aid station. As far as I know, Amy and Zoe gathered their things and headed back to their rooms. I told Brad to keep her away from me, right now. I was confused about what I was going to do. Brad left me at I went to the dispensary with the doctor and came back to examine the women. The doctor came back later, and I told him to take the women to dinner. I'll contact him later. He asked me what I was going to do. He knew me like no one else. I didn't answer him but repeated my instructions. "Eric, don't do anything. You'll regret this. Take some time to cool down. Brad, you didn't catch Amy cheating. I was the one who caught Zoya. I don't know if I can live with this. Please leave now. I'll talk to you later." I went to my room and packed my bag. I left Zoe a note saying I never wanted to see her again. I couldn't handle her betrayal the way she did. I still loved her, but part of me was dead now. I went to the captain of the cruise ship and told him I wanted to leave. He tried to argue with me, but in the end he allowed me to leave his ship. It was the only port I could get off at. I had an airport, so I took a taxi to the airport and bought a ticket home. I had plenty of time to think on the way. It took me a few extra hours due to a plane connection I had to make. I came home feeling beaten, both inside and out. When I entered the house, it was dark and gloomy. There was no Zoe. My marriage broke up. There's no point in continuing. I know most people don't understand this. I don't understand them either. I'd rather be shot than see Zoya with another man. It was so bad I was lost and devastated. I pulled out a bottle of Kentucky bourbon and started drinking. My phone started ringing. I saw it was a sea-to-land call, probably from Zoe or Brad. I let the answering machine take the call. "Eric, if you're there, please pick up. This is Brad. We need to talk. Zoya is in a mess. We won't be able to get off the ship until it lands in 4 days, so please pick up if you are there." I picked up the phone. "Brad, I need to tell you something. Eric, thank God you're safe at home. We were very worried about you. We contacted the ship's captain, and he said you left the ship. What's going on, Eric? I'm divorcing Zoya, and I'm probably leaving the company tomorrow. I'll meet with a lawyer and get all the paperwork ready. Your share of the business will go to Zoya. I don't like her for what she did to me, but I'll always love her. Eric, you can't just leave. You need to think about what you're doing. I'm sure you and Zoe can handle it. She loves you, yes, that's right. She loves me so much that she cheated on me with another man on our anniversary. I can't stand this kind of love anyway. I don't want to talk anymore. I have things I need to do. What are you doing, Eric? Please. Let's wait until we get home and sort this out. I just hung up. In fact, I even turned off the answering machine. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out my Luger, which was my father's gun that he gave me many years ago. I sat there drinking bourbon and cleaning the Luger. I was so tired that I went over to the sofa and passed out. I really thought about stopping this life and ending it all, but I needed to know more facts. My memory started working overtime. I chose the path of revenge. The next morning, I went to the lawyer's office and told him what I wanted. He didn't ask me any personal questions about what I was doing. He was an old friend of ours who had been with us since we opened our doors. I know he wanted to say something, but he knew I meant what I said. I asked him to draw up a divorce decree for me and Zoe. By decree, I transferred half. I also gave all our property to Zoya. The house itself cost about $2 million less than we owed on it, not counting the furniture. I didn't need any of this. I withdrew $750,000 from our assets. I had to cash out some of our shares, and the lawyer was supposed to give the documents to Zoe and Brad as soon as they returned from the cruise. We had offices in Ohio and Illinois, and we had the best people in leadership positions. Brad and I would go to the Illinois branch. Once a month we'd check the records and see how things were going. When Zoe joined our firm, we sent her to Illinois. She loved the break from her regular job. We had a lot of great people working for us, which is one of the reasons we were able to go away for a week and know the business was in good hands. I went home and packed 2 suitcases with the essentials. 2 days later, I walked into our office, and everyone was surprised that I'd come back. They saw that I'd been in a fight and asked what happened and about Brad, Amy, and Zoe. I just told them the truth. I told them I'd been beaten up and the doctor said I should go home and rest. They didn't need to know the truth. I tried to put on a happy face, but it was impossible. I told them I was going away for a while, but Brad would be back in a couple of days. Nobody questioned it. After all, I was the boss, or at least one of them. I called the travel agents and asked them to book me a ticket. I used the company computer and transferred most of my money and savings to a bank in the Bahamas. I drove my Mercedes to the Illinois branch. This was done as a cover. I walked in and saw the people who worked there. They were surprised to see me. It was nice to know that I caught everyone at work. When you have well-performing employees, you feel very good. Of course, we paid them well. They asked about her and how she was doing. The people at this branch really liked her. They said she liked one of the fitness clubs there. She went there to train every time she came to the office. During the office visit, she never mentioned to me that she was working out. I wonder why. I decided to visit the health club and find out a little more. When I got there, I realized something was wrong. It was a nude health club. I was asked if I was a member, and I said that my wife is a member and I'm thinking about joining. I told them Zoe's name, and the manager smiled. He said she was a very nice woman, but I noticed a slight smirk on his face. I asked for a tour, and a young woman showed me to a private changing room. I was told that I could go on the tour, but that I'd have to take off my clothes because it would make other participants uncomfortable. My companion I got talking to a young lady called Ray. I think I can get a lot of information from her. I asked her why she was wearing clothes and I had to be naked. She smiled and said, "I work here, Mr. Burke, but if you want, I'll take my clothes off too." She took off her clothes and had a beautiful, slender body. I couldn't help but stare at her. She said she could take care of me for a fee. I told her that I would look pretty stupid on the tour dressed like that. "How much does it cost to relieve my stress?" I asked her. I haven't been with another woman since I married Zoe. I was torn between, I love her, and I want revenge on sleeping with this young girl, Racine. I'll give you more if you do this and answer a few questions about Zoe. We shouldn't talk about the other members, but since it's your wife, I think it's okay, but don't tell the boss. I told you I need a job that's fun. And it pays well, she replied. Call me Eric. I think we're pretty close now. Do you know Zoya very well? I've seen her for the last couple of years. She comes and uses the facilities and has made a lot of friends. Are your friends men or women? Both men and women. She is a very attractive woman. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I was with her too. Yes, I know she loves women as much as men. I lied. I had no idea Zoe was like this. I saw the look on your boss's face. I bet he enjoyed. Oh, and he slept with her too. Jim Harley and Bob Fritz are members here too. I asked, yeah, they're just guys who come here to find a girl to have sex with. They always came when Zoe was here, and she paid for a private room. The 3 of them were there. Eric, you are one of the nicest men to ever come here. You treated me like a woman, not like a girl of easy virtue. Zoya is a happy woman who has a man like you. Not every guy would share that. I couldn't believe I did it. It was with someone other than Zoya. I said, I'll probably join her next time in town. Of course, I had no intention of returning to Chicago. I went to a Mercedes dealership and told them I wanted to sell my car. They were surprised until I told them that I wouldn't need it anymore because I was moving abroad. I was practically robbed of the deal, but I received at least half the value. I took a taxi to the airport. I asked the taxi driver to stop at a sporting goods store and buy a baseball cap and a baseball bat, which seemed a little strange to him, but I suppose it's my business. When I got to the airport, the taxi driver checked my bags. I still had the Luger on me, and I didn't want to get caught with it in the terminal. At first, the taxi driver refused, but a tip of $100 convinced him otherwise. He handed me the luggage tickets, and I took the baseball bat and asked him to drop me off at I got out of the taxi in the long-term parking lot and gave him another C and told him that he had never seen me. It was time to carry out my plan. The two guys, Jim and Bob, were from Illinois. Their plane was due to arrive in the next half hour. When I called to book my flight, I asked when the return flight was due to arrive. I then looked in the Chicago phone book and found the name Jim Harley. I called him, and his wife answered. I asked when Jim was due back from the Bahamas. She said, "I don't care if that son of a ever comes back. If you need insurance, you should go. I'm married to him somewhere else, and I'm telling you what's going to happen as soon as he gets home. I'll send him divorce papers. It should be this afternoon. Sorry if I offended you, sir, but what kind of husband takes a friend on a cruise instead of his wife? I just found out that he also has a girlfriend here in town. I should just shoot the bastard." I told her thank you and quickly hung up. Maybe I should just let her deal with him. My problem now is what kind of car do they have? They mentioned that they parked at the far end of the lawn. I parked in a car park so I could practice. I think it was because it's cheaper. I walked to the back of the car park wearing a baseball cap, a baseball bat in my hand, and gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints. About half an hour later, I saw two guys with their suitcases walking towards the back of the car park near where I was. They laughed and didn't pay any attention to what was happening. I beat them, then I got on a plane. I got back to the Bahamas and took a taxi to my hotel, which was really beautiful. I wish I had Zoe to share it with. I spent the next couple of days just thinking about what I was going to do. I found myself drinking and thinking about Zoya every day. I became more and more depressed. I had to do something, otherwise I wouldn't have made it. I decided to call Brad. "Eric, where are you? According to the administrator, you were in the Bahamas." "Hi, Eric, I hope you're well. I just wanted to give you a quick update on what's going on. The lawyer came by and said that you're planning to give half of your business assets to Zoya. I spoke with her today, and she left home after you left her on the cruise. She hasn't left her room and hasn't spoken to anyone, not even Amy, who was just trying to get her to eat. Amy said that all she wanted to do was cry. I'm really worried about what she might do next. I can't see her, Brad. I just can't. Every time I see her in my dreams, she cheats. I feel like a big part of me is dead. If I don't find something to do, the rest of me will probably follow. I don't understand this. You can't live without Zoe, and she can't live without you. But right now, you're both 1,000 miles away from each other." Brad said, "Anyway, Brad, I'm thinking about staying here. I was thinking about opening an office here. There are many clients here. People here are on vacation. Plus, there's all the business. What do you think?" "Eric, you stopped by the Illinois office, didn't you?" "I came in to reserve a table." "Why do you ask?" "It seems that 2 men got off the plane and were beaten. People from our office in Illinois sent us a copy of the newspaper." He said, "Brad, why are you interested in the robbery that happened at the Illinois airport?" The 2 men were Jim and Bob. Our office staff found this interesting because the 2 men had just returned from a cruise in the Bahamas, according to the newspaper. They have no idea who the attacker was other than that he was wearing a baseball cap and carrying a bat. They say he also had a pistol, possibly a Luger. Your father gave you a Luger, didn't he?" "Eric, yes. I got rid of it a while ago." "Glad to hear those 2 idiots got what they deserved. Did Zoya see the article?" "Oh, and tell Zoe the folks at the gym in Chicago were sending their regards." "What about a business deal? I can make it happen." "Eric, you really need to talk to Zoya. She's in another office, but I can set up a meeting." I was a bit emotional on the phone, but I got back to business. I closed a few deals, even though I wasn't in the mood. About a week later, I got a call. It was Brad. "Eric, I'm sorry to tell you that Zoe is gone. She hasn't been seen for 3 days. Amy came to visit her and gave her power of attorney to sell the house and all the property. She told Amy that she couldn't live there without you and that she would contact her when she got to her destination. We contacted a lawyer and she didn't sign the divorce decrees. She tore it up in front of him and didn't tell Amy where she was going. 3 days passed and we didn't hear anything from her. Haven't heard anything from her? Brad said, I heard the extension phone being picked up. Eric, I know you don't want to talk to Zoe, but I want you to listen to me. You need to know the truth, and Zoya was afraid that you wouldn't believe her. Amy told me what Zoe said really happened that day. She said that when she went to get water, those two took Zoya without her consent. Sent Amy your best friend. Zoe lied to you. She's been with these 2 guys. And there have been others since we got married. She was also with several women. I said there was dead silence on the other end of the phone. Finally, Brad spoke. You may well need to know the truth since you know so much. Amy and Zoe have been together several times. One night, I found them together, and then I had to make a choice. Either divorce Amy or join them. I joined them, but she really loves you. She loves you, but she loves sex just as much. Please talk to her. Maybe we can all share our feelings with each other. They were still in touch. Amy, you're a beautiful woman. I've always liked you. You're Brad's wife and you were my friend, but you're a liar. I'm looking for the truth, and you're not helping. I don't want anything. What about you, Brad? I want to completely leave this business. I suggest you talk to Zoya and tell her to stay out of my life. I can't stand liars. And cheaters. If she wants sex, she needs to rely on you too. I hung up, and there was a knock on the door. My dinner must have arrived. Zoe in high school and then in college, I was popular. I knew I looked good, but I also knew there was more to it than that. I tried really hard to be more than just a pretty face. My grades were very good, and I made the honor roll in high school and the dean's list in college every year. My first sexual experience, I was 20 when it happened. I just got a job as an executive secretary at an investment firm. I fell in love with one of the bosses. I swear it was love at first sight. His name was Eric, and we started dating about a month after I started the job. At first, I was a little wary about dating my boss. I was afraid that we would have sex and then I would have to look for another job or constantly hold back. Then I had to make a choice. I didn't have to worry about Eric. He's the kindest, sweetest, most wonderful person I've ever known. I would die for him in a second if necessary. On the 4th date, I invited him to my house, but we didn't have sex after the first time. I didn't even think about another man. We went everywhere together. I just wanted to be with him. After dating for about a year, he asked me to marry him. I asked him if he was really interested in my past, but I didn't want to have any secrets from him. He said that our past was just that, our past. He didn't want to hear about my past sexual experiences, and I didn't want to hear about his. What mattered was that we would be together forever. I promised him that I would always be faithful to him. I know he liked to show me off, but I didn't mind as long as it made him happy. He said he didn't mind other men looking at me, but they weren't allowed to touch me. We even went to nudist camps, and he wasn't jealous because he knew that I was his and only his. We were rich, which was good, but I was more interested in hanging out with Eric. He bought me everything I ever wanted. I tried to dress as sexy as possible for him. He even helped me choose some clothes. I trained regularly. My friend Amy would sometimes come over, and we would play sports together. Life couldn't have been better for Eric and me for our 5th wedding anniversary. Eric received 4 cruise tickets to the Bahamas. I was so happy. I was happy, and then he told me that Brad and Amy were coming with us. They're just like us, madly in love and hilarious. Eric and I are godparents to their 2 children, who spend a lot of time with us. We're all pretty close. We had a great time on the cruise, even though it was only our first day. My favorite part was when Eric and I sat alone on the deck and looked out at the ocean. We could see small islands, and Eric said that he'd like to move to a place like this with me and spend the rest of our lives together. It was a dream that maybe we'll be able to realize one day. We also went to the deck was the place to be for sunbathing. Eric and Brad were smiling as Amy and I strolled out on the cruise. We drank, danced, and met other people. I met 2 guys on the cruise at a nude health club in Chicago. I never told Eric about the club because it was my secret. Brad told me about the health club a couple of years ago. The first time I went there, The manager showed me around. I don't know why I did it, but I slept with him from that day on. I would go there when visiting the Chicago office and have sex with both men and women. It wasn't love at all, it was just sex with different people. One day when I arrived there, I met Jim, Bob. They weren't interested in love, they just wanted sex. It was everything I wanted. I got worried when they saw me on the ship. I was afraid that they would reveal my secret, and then Eric would divorce me. They told me that my secret was safe with them. I love this man. The next day, Eric and Brad went snorkeling. Amy and I went to the beach. It was so crowded that we could barely find a place to put a blanket, so we headed to the least crowded beach. This was nothing new. We have been there many times, only with our husbands. We positioned ourselves as far away from everyone as possible. We didn't want to be stared at without our... After a while, we looked up and saw Jim and Bob, two guys who had been sitting at our table the night before. I should mention that Amy was my best friend, and she noticed that I was a little nervous when I saw these two guys. I told her about the club in Chicago, and I knew she would keep my secret. We have our own secret. She and I have been having sex for many years. We love our husbands, but there is something special about being with another woman. One night Brad caught us. She cried and asked him for forgiveness. I know that Brad always wanted me, but because of his friendship with Eric, he never tried. I invited him to join us if he kept our secret. After that, I had a threesome with Amy and Brad. I really wanted Eric to be a part of this, since we were all good friends. I was afraid that he wouldn't want to be a part of it, and that I would lose him. Amy and I went into the water, and Jim and Bill followed while we were swimming. Some guys came up to us. Amy told me she wasn't going to have sex with them. The only person who'd made love to her besides Brad was me. She said she'd let Eric take her, but that day hadn't come yet. Amy said she needed to get some water. I told her we'd wait for her to come back and bring us a drink. I knew I needed to have sex with these two guys. I really didn't want to, but if I didn't, I knew they would tell Eric and my life would be over. I kept thinking what a terrible mistake I had made from the very beginning, and now I was paying for it when Eric found out everything. Eric didn't want to see me. I really wanted to explain the truth to him, but he didn't even talk to me. Amy, Brad, and I went to dinner. I didn't eat anything. I just sat there thinking about what Eric had been through. I was really worried that I would lose him. I felt like I would die without him during dinner. Then the ship set off. We had to be on the water for at least 2 days before docking again, and 5 days before the end of the cruise. At least 2 days before we docked again, and 5 days before the end of the cruise, I went back to my room to see how Eric was doing. His things were missing. I rushed to Amy and Brad's cabin to tell them I wasn't sure what happened. We contacted the captain, who showed us the paper that Eric signed to leave the ship. I told him I wanted to leave too, but he said it was impossible because we were no longer on the ship. I went to my cabin and cried. I went to the ship's doctor for sleeping pills. I wanted to take the whole bottle. I was ready to end it all. I think the doctor saw that I was upset and gave me enough to help me sleep. I spent the rest of the cruise in my cabin. The only person I saw was Amy, who was a really good friend. I cried on her shoulder for hours. She told me to give myself some time and that things might get better when we returned home. I went back to work to keep myself busy and not think about it. A few days later, I got a message to say I needed to go and see our lawyer. He gave me the divorce papers that Eric and he had drawn up. Eric had agreed to give me millions of dollars. I didn't want money. I wanted my Eric. I tore up the papers and decided I needed to do something too. I needed to get my Eric back. I called Amy and gave her power of attorney to sell all of our property. I told her I was going to find Eric. She told me Eric was back in the Bahamas, but I told her not to tell Brad. I decided to wait 3 days before telling Brad I was missing. Brad deserved it for not telling me where Eric was. It was a vicious circle. Brad told me that the office in Illinois reported that 2 men had been severely beaten. It was Jim and Bob. I just knew that my Eric did it. I wondered if he did it out of revenge or for my sake. I found out he was in Illinois when the dealership wanted to check out the purchase of our Mercedes. I told him that my husband sold the car. I told them we were moving to the Bahamas and that's where I was going. It took me 2 days to find out exactly where he was going, and I booked a ticket to approach his room. I was scared. I knocked on the door and heard him say, "Just a minute." I heard him on the phone with Brad. Just before I knocked on the door, Brad opened it and pulled out his wallet to pay for dinner. "How much do I owe you?" he asked. I looked up and saw Zoya, the woman I loved and hated at the same time. Large crocodile tears flowed down her cheeks. I was stunned and didn't know what to do. I've learned so much about her and her sex life in the last few days. Now I had to deal with this. I've learned a lot about her and her sex life in the last few days. Now I had to deal with this. She looked at me and said, "Eric, I love you. I lied to you. I need to tell you everything. I have so much to tell you. When I'm done, you can either make love to me or beg me. Leave it will be completely your choice. Just give me a chance. Before we end our business together, I'll do whatever you ask." This could get interesting. She didn't know that I found out about the health club or about Amy and Brad. Let's see if I get more lies or truth. I invited her in, and over the next 2 hours she told me everything, all about the Chicago Health Club. She told me how she met him and Bob. I was surprised she even told me about the women. She started crying and told me about Amy and then about Brad. She even told me that they wanted to meet us, but she doesn't want it anymore. She said she wanted to get away from this lie, but it kept getting bigger. She said she knew she was tied to this lie unless she told me about it and decided I would divorce her. She also told me that it was Brad who told her about the health club. I didn't know that. I thought that he was probably the one who started the fight between Jim and Bob, knowing that Zoe couldn't get out of it. "Eric, I love you, but I need you to get out of this without telling me. I want to start over with you if you'll give me a chance. We can do this the life we talked about, and we can live together here in the Bahamas. I can't live without you. I'm not sure what else to do now. It's up to you whether you give me another chance or not." There was a knock on the door. I'd ordered Chinese for dinner, so I knew I'd have something to share with Zoe. I asked her if she was hungry, and she said she hadn't eaten much since I left. She asked me about my decision. I told her I couldn't make such a decision on an empty stomach. I watched her while we ate. We didn't even talk during that period. She was beautiful. I still loved her, but I didn't know what I would do. I knew that all ties with Amy and Brad would be severed, and I would no longer have I didn't want to think about them. What about Zoe? We finished eating and Zoya stood up. "Eric, do you want me to take off my clothes so we can start over and make love, or do you want me to leave so you can never see me again?" I had to decide, would I be happier with Zoya in my life, or would I rather never see her again? I had to make a choice. I loved Zoe with all my heart. I always thought we were a couple, and that we would be together forever. But she cheated on me time and time again. I can't live like this. I can't trust her again. Please leave now. I don't want to see you. She started crying again as she came over to the balcony overlooking the city. We were on the 23rd floor. She turned to me with tears streaming down her face. "Eric, I'm so sorry. I really love you, and I can't live knowing that I'll never see you again. I know I hurt you, but I can't take it back. Please forgive me," she said, and then jumped.